In Chapter 6, we look at working from a histogram, also known as a distribution, backwards to a mean, and in the textbook, by a little bit more complicated mechanism, even to a standard deviation. There are times when you have only a histogram, such as the one you see on the screen at present. This is the distribution of the share of Facebook users in the United States as of June 2025 by age group. So you can see that the most common age group on Facebook is actually 25 to 34, but the age groups go all the way up to above 65. From this, we can't immediately discern what the mean is, just that it's probably somewhere near that 35 to 44 range, somewhere in there, but we're not sure where. We can use this information from the histogram to work backwards to get to the mean of the mean age of a Facebook user, for in this example. We're actually being given relative frequencies by the height of the columns. So if we put this into a spreadsheet, we get this that you see here at the top. The top of the spreadsheet, you can see those numbers from the columns, which are over here. The 18.6 is here. I'm using the class upper limits from the bottom of the chart, 18 to 24. That last group is actually 65 and up, but we don't know how much up it goes, so we have to fudge that one. Since the other class upper limits were 24, 34, 44, 54, etc., we just made it 74. Now, depending on how you measure users, there are something on the order of 253.5 active users in the United States. These are U.S. numbers we're using in 2025. About 253 million. That's millions. So we're missing our frequency data here. That's our total, that's our sample size, 253 million. But we can recover that. We don't need to do this, but we certainly can get it back. We want to take this, but we're going to multiply that times this. But we're going to lock that on the 8 because I don't want that to drift down as I go. And then I'm going to do this and then autofill. And that tells me how many users are in each of those categories. I didn't need to do that, but that makes this histogram look more like a Chapter 3 histogram. You can go back and review Chapter 3 to see that. Now I can work out the age. It's going to be X, only it's got to be start with an equals. Let me go up here. Equals this here times this. The relative frequency is the probability. Check. I'm going to fill that down. And then, so this column is a new column. I've had to create that column. I've added it into my spreadsheet. And now I just add those numbers up to get the mean. So it's just the class upper limit times the relative frequency. I can now add those numbers up equals the sum. I put in there sum. It showed up right there of these numbers here. Edit that, accidental tap, extra tap. That's right. So the average age of a Facebook user, according to this histogram, is about 45 years old on average. The average user. Actually, slightly more than half are less than 45 because it's a skewed distribution with a right tail. It's not perfectly symmetric. What we'll learn to call a normal distribution. But that's how I can get backwards. I just take the class upper limit. That's my X value right there. It's the one that in the book I'll call that the X value. And a probability of X is the relative frequency. Normally, I would calculate the relative frequency from the frequency, 47 million divided by 253 million. But in this case, my histogram was a relative frequency histogram, so they were giving me the relative frequencies at the top of the chart. So that's a little different. I did a similar thing with TikTok. They have a chart that only goes up to 45 and up. That tells you that they don't even think about users much older than probably 55-ish. So this is a slightly different one. The class upper limits end at 54 instead of 74. But they have about 135 million users in 2025, best estimates. So those are the frequencies. But again, they were reverse engineered by figuring out the heights of the columns. That was sort of a guess and golly, but they've got to add up to 1. So those are our best estimates of the column heights. So our best estimate of the mean age for a TikTok user is about 32.3, over a decade younger than a Facebook user. And this is simply a reflection of the generations that are using it. An older generation uses Facebook. A younger generation is using TikTok. But the process here is the same. I read these values here from the histogram chart that you see down here. That's available online, but the specifics aren't. The 135, that's available online. You can get an estimated user base for 2025 for TikTok, about 135 million US users. The histogram is also for US users. So this gives you the breakdown, and now you can estimate that mean age, and you can see that indeed Facebook has on average, the users are going to be a decade older, a little bit more than a decade older than the average the TikTok user's mean age. So that when we need to go from a histogram backwards to a mean, we can use this process. The textbook also outlines a process to get at the estimated standard deviation of the data, should that be needed. But for the purposes of this video, just getting to the mean, we can see now a difference between the mean age for Facebook users and the mean age for those using TikTok, and produce an estimate of those ages. Thanks for watching.